Joining us now from Capitol Hill, member of the Foreign Relations and Judiciary Committees, Democratic Senator Chris Coons of Delaware. Senator, what do you make of this?
Well, Mika, this was a surprising development, and I haven't been briefed on it, but it's a reminder of the ongoing turmoil and challenges in the Middle East. We've got American forces on the ground and in the air in the campaign against ISIS in the Raqqa area and continuing operations against ISIS in Mosul, in Iraq. And frankly, this threat of renewed action against Assad for his potential use of chemical weapons again against his own people is a reminder that we are still waiting for a strategy from President Trump about how we're going to conduct both the war against ISIS and whether he will conduct any further strikes against Assad.
Yeah, Mike?
Senator, given the fact that we know that the President of the United States has more or less removed himself from the chain of command about troop movements in Afghanistan, handing them over to the discretion of Secretary Mattis and the military, what do we know, if anything, about the chain of command behind this statement issued late last night?
Right.
Mike, I don't know where this statement exactly came from and where the decision to threaten Assad with an additional attack came from. I did support the previous strike against Assad's regime after years of brutality against his own people. In violation of international norms, the continued use of chemical weapons, I'll remind you, shows that Russia's actions, in which they said they guaranteed that Assad had given up all of his chemical weapons, were not fully truthful. Assad continues to brutalize and murder his own people with the support of Vladimir Putin's Russia and Iran. But if we're going to take another action against Assad, we need to know who's responsible for it. At the end of the day, Mike, Trump is the commander-in-chief, and he can't simply outsource important national security decisions like taking a strike that might release chemical weapons against an entire community.
Senator, it's Willie Geist. So when the President of the United States says that Syria will pay a heavy price if they launch this chemical attack, that sounds to most people like a red line, the kind that he criticized President Obama for drawing and then once it was crossed, not doing anything about. So what should an American reading that statement this morning believe? What should they think? Is there an attack imminent from Syria? What
should we know? Do you believe that?
Well, it certainly suggests to me that they are preparing for another strike against Assad and that this was designed to be a red line statement. That's exactly the sort of thing that can be irresponsible or even dangerous if you make a very bright line statement without having laid out a strategy for backing it up and without consulting with congressional leaders. I do think President Trump would get support from many members of Congress for striking Assad's chemical weapons forces, but to do so would require careful planning and a clear strategy. Right. I'll remind you, if you strike the bunkers where chemical weapons are stored, you risk releasing them into the whole atmosphere in the area and causing more harm than good. Yeah. And Assad is obviously strongly backed by Russia, and we risk escalating the conflict in Syria by taking a strike without the understanding and support of the American people.
You just said a second ago, Senator, that sounds to you like they're preparing for some kind of a launch, that the White House is preparing for some kind of an attack on Syria. Is that based on intelligence you have or just your reading of the statement?
That's just my reading of the statement. I've received no other briefing of any kind.
Are you comfortable with this statement and Nikki Haley's tweet?
I continue to be uncomfortable with foreign policy decisions made by tweet. And I've, frankly, candidate Trump said that he would be unpredictable in foreign affairs, and President Trump has certainly delivered on that. When I've gone to regional security conferences with the North Atlantic community, I just returned from one with Senator McCain in the Asia Pacific, I hear that our allies and our opponents are deeply unsettled by the unpredictability of President Trump. We here in Congress are focused this week, especially in the Senate, on the health care bill. And this is a reminder that there's lots of other developments in the outside world. But this is the week where we either are or are not going to see Republicans move forward the bill that they developed in secret that would take away health care from 22 million Americans. I suspect most Americans watching this show this morning aren't expecting an escalation in the conflict in Syria.
Well, Senator, back to our policy in Afghanistan. Are you or any of your colleagues bothered by the president's apparent recusal from being the commander-in-chief over our Afghanistan policy?
Yes, the commander-in-chief is responsible for making important strategic decisions. I understand a desire to allow combatant commanders to make week-by-week decisions, tactical decisions, but a decision that changes our trajectory in Afghanistan by reinserting thousands of American troops and asking our vital NATO allies to continue to shoulder the burden alongside us of fighting in Afghanistan. That's a commander-in-chief decision. And we in the Foreign Relations Committee, both Democrats and Republicans, have been asking for an administration witness to come forward and testify about their strategy in Afghanistan and ISIS. That's the president's responsibility.
So, Senator, let's talk about something you just touched on that concerns a lot of people, millions of them in your state. And that is this health care bill that's being cobbled together by Republicans in the Senate. Based on what you know of it, based on what you've read and seen, what would it do specifically to your state? Your colleague, Senator Carper, said it might pull back $2 billion in Medicaid funds for the state of Delaware. Is that your read?
My read is that we've got roughly 30,000 Delawareans who get health care through the exchange, where the Affordable Care Act made it possible for them to get quality, affordable care for the first time. They would be at risk of losing access to health care. More importantly, the hundreds of thousands of Delawareans who get their health insurance through their employer might face the loss of the consumer protections, the essential health benefits that are guaranteed through the ACA. Across the country, 150 million Americans have higher quality insurance because of the ACA. I think we don't talk about that enough. The pre-existing condition protection, the ban on lifetime caps, the ban on discrimination based on gender, keeping your kids on health care through 26, that affects 150 million Americans, and those would be swept away through a series of state waivers in the Senate Republican bill.
Senator, I want to play for you Senator Mazie Hirono of Hawaii speaking in the well of the Senate last night. Take a listen.
My moment of reckoning came 2 months ago. During a routine physical, my doctor told me I have kidney cancer. It's a moment everyone dreads. Tomorrow, I'm going in for surgery to remove the lesion I have on my rib, but I'm going to be back as quickly as I can to keep up the fight against this mean, ugly bill.
Very stark personal terms, but the bill, I still come back to the fact that I don't understand how anybody could vote for this with a straight face. What is your kind of, I guess, mindset of the state of affairs on Capitol Hill right now?
Mika, you know I'm someone who tries very hard to be bipartisan, to work across the aisle, to move forward legislation. This is very hard. It is very hard. I sat on the floor behind Senator Hirono, a close friend, as she gave that speech yesterday. It's hard to look this right in the face and not be angry at my Republican colleagues. I have an extended family member, my cousin's brother, Deucer, who's been a quadriplegic for most of his adult life. His family could never afford his care. Medicaid has made his care possible, has sustained his life for decades, and has given him a quality of life that would be impossible otherwise. Every day I am mindful of the Delawareans, of people I know across this country who rely on Medicaid. The idea that we are going to see a bill come to the floor here in the Senate that would cut hundreds of billions of dollars out of Medicaid over the next decade, when President Trump promised on the campaign trail that he would not cut Medicaid. This is a very important moment for the values of this country. Who do we value? What do we value? That's what's on the floor this week.
Yeah, it's going to be a vote of conscience for everyone concerned, Senator. On another issue before we let you go, the Supreme Court ruling yesterday allowing the president's travel ban to go forward in part. What's your take on that?
Well, I think it reflects the Supreme Court's long deference to the executive branch in matters of national security and immigration. I'm troubled by a number of the decisions that were released yesterday, showing a conservative trend in the court. But I think on this particular issue, we'll have to wait until oral argument and a full decision in the fall.
All right. Senator Coons, thank you so much for being on the show this morning. Appreciate it.